Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I post weekly movie and series reviews as well as retrospectives of some of my favorite movies and franchises. This week, I've already dropped a review for Reacher Season 2. You can find that, along with all the other reviews I've already done on my channel. I'm also working my way back through the MCU in my MCU retrospective series. My most recent video for the first Thor movie was uploaded on Thursday, so check that one out as well. You can find all of the other previous installments in that series in my MCU retrospective playlist. Thanks to everyone for all the support I've been getting so far, and if you haven't yet, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and most importantly, tell your friends. With that all out of the way, let's dive into Killers of the Flower Moon. Man, I don't know where to begin with this one. I will say this is a good movie. It's a very good movie. It's interesting, it's engaging, it's heartbreaking, it's chilling, it's sorrowful, it's beautiful, it's powerful. It's all of those things, and it's also kind of hard to watch. I don't say that to imply that this movie is overly gory or even extremely violent. I say this to emphasize that the weight of this story is heavy. And it isn't a story that I was familiar with. I think the best jumping off point is to define the flower moon. The flower moon, as the film elaborates on, is the name given to the full moon in May by Native American tribes, as wildflowers blooming across North America signal the beginning of spring. It's a phenomenon which is very important and also deeply spiritual to the Osage people, as the film alludes. I think the title of this movie and the novel it draws from intend to make a statement preemptively that this isn't a story you'll be moved by or entertained by, but it's an important story that needs to be told. It's a story of a beautiful, innocent, spiritually connected people, as the flower symbolizes, that had numerous injustices forced upon them. It's, without mincing words, a pretty somber affair. You won't come out of this movie amused or enthusiastic to discuss the experience, and I hesitate to put it on the same level as 12 Years a Slave because they're both very different films, but both of these movies left me with the same line of thought, which is, that was a very well-made movie, a sad but inspiring story, and I'm glad I watched it. However, I don't know that I'll ever watch it again. This is a film about greed, loyalty, about struggle and oppression, and in the end, finally, about triumph. But at its core, it's just a story about human nature. Now, I don't want this review to be all doom and gloom because, as I suggest, this is a very good film. This is Scorsese doing some of his finest work. His fingerprints are all over this production. He even cameos as a radio broadcaster in the epilogue of this film. Scorsese is one of my top 5 favorite directors of all time. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I have to say, this, more than a lot of his films, it seems very personal to him. I don't mean that as a slight to the rest of his body of work, because he seems to be a man who puts his heart and soul into everything he does. But in Killers of the Flower Moon, you get the sense that he somehow feels slightly responsible for this story not being told sooner. The ambiance of this film feels very akin to the work he did with Silence. It's genuinely intimate and visually appalling. He makes you feel every bit of this story, and that's a testament to his skill as a master of his craft. Now, I do have to acknowledge my one issue with this film, and that is, at points it feels like DiCaprio and De Niro are the two co-leads of this film. And if it's a surprise to anyone, I apologize, but DiCaprio and De Niro are the villains of this film. DiCaprio more so a tragic villain, but I'll dig into that in a bit. And Scorsese does a fantastic job, I think, at giving ample and equitable screen time to both the villains of this story as well as the heroes. And heroes sounds weird. The Osage people are the victims of this story, so let's change that. He does great at giving an equal share of this film to both the victims and the victimizers of this story. So going back to my co-lead issue, DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone should have been the co-leads, and I think Scorsese probably attempted to make it that way, but sporadically throughout the runtime, it doesn't always feel that way. And that really is my only gripe with this movie. Even though it can be difficult to watch at some points, there is a lot to appreciate about Killers of the Flower Moon, mainly the story and the performances. The film is obviously based on a true story, and in my opinion, films like these only land on two sides of a spectrum. They are either very well crafted, or they just feel ultimately unnecessary. More times than not, when I view a film that is based on real events, I come out thinking, I much rather would have read over the facts of this case or seen the documentary version. I believe the only way these types of films work, and the only way they come off as compelling, all has to do with the movie's presentation. What Scorsese does with Killers, and the way he stages this story, is expertly managed. He doesn't give you all of the details right from the start. He gives you little tidbits as we go along, making you question every character's motive, every character's integrity, and you spend much of the duration of this film trying to decide who knows what and who is an accomplice to these crimes. You have suspicions here and there, but he makes you wait until the end to give you all the facts. It makes this otherwise straightforward story all that more engaging. The structure only works as well as its performances, and luckily, the three most prominent ones all succeed tremendously at bolstering the story. I think I want to start with De Niro first. I've always loved Robert De Niro. I mean, how can you not? The guy has featured in pretty much every prominent mob and gangster film to date. He's just got so much swag and moxie that even when he's not playing a good guy, he's always likable. That being said, I will be the first to admit he essentially plays the same character for a lot of the movies he stars in. And that's not a bad thing, it's just a fact. He's good at it. But here, in this movie, it's a refreshing contrast. Over the course of my life, I cannot recall a time when I saw a movie where De Niro spoke in any accent other than his native Manhattan tongue. De Niro shocked me in this movie. He plays our lead villain of the film, William Hale. Hale was a cattle rancher by trade, and as portrayed in the film, he became a prominent figure of the town of Fairfax by entering into crooked deals with the banks, politicians, businessmen, and swindling the Osage people. His main investment being the Osage people themselves. De Niro navigates both sides of this character expertly. The Osage people at the time had amassed great wealth due to the massive oil deposits that were discovered on their land. However, in order to access all their money, they must go through their white court-appointed guardians. It became commonplace at the time for white men or white women to attempt a courtship with an Osage man or woman in the hopes of someday marrying them and having legal access to their wealth. Hale used his power and influence to weasel his way into this system. He would open up insurance policies on any natives that worked for him to collect the money after having them murdered. He would marry off family members to Osage natives in the hopes that their wealth would in time pass on to him. All the while, he remained close with the Osage people, befriending them, providing for them, and became well respected by them. The manner in which De Niro portrays Hale is brilliant. You absolutely despise him, and from the beginning you immediately have your suspicions about him. But this character really is a dual role. an affectionate, welcoming man of the people, and a mysterious, conniving, ruthless businessman. It was an incredible change of pace for De Niro, and especially this late in his career. I was really happy with what I saw from him in this film. Then there's Leo. I mean, when is he not good? He's always good. It's Leo DiCaprio after all. He gives so much dedication to this role as he does so many others. He plays Ernest Burkhart, nephew of William Hale. He is a simple man of low intellect who returns from the war to live with his uncle and brother in Fairfax. He doesn't have a ton of skill, so he becomes a taxi driver. And under Hale's influence, he strikes up a relationship with Molly Kyle, a wealthy Osage woman who owns a fair amount of oil head rights. Ernest and Molly marry and have children together. Mysterious murders have already begun to occur around the town, but they begin to strike at Molly's family. All of her sisters are murdered one after the other, and as I stated, Scorsese holds certain key details from you throughout the movie. You get glimpses of Ernest being involved in some of his uncle's schemes, but you can't really tell until it's shown to you if he is directly involved in the crimes against Molly's family. This character is strange because his loyalty and dedication to his wife eclipses that to his uncle. You can see his heart is being torn back and forth between the two biggest influences in his life from scene to scene, and not knowing who to fully commit himself to. You don't like the man because of what he does, but you come to pity him in a sense. Leo convinces you that his character deeply cares for his wife, and he's simultaneously troubled by the duties his uncle coerces him into. In the end, when he decides to testify against Hale for all of the murders and insurance fraud and any other crimes, Hale tries to convince him to stay loyal and tells him if he doesn't, he'll regret it. And Ernest responds to Hale that he already has a lot of regrets in his life. You can tell this man is broken, and one thing he does know for a fact that he admits on the witness stand is that he does love his wife very deeply. And whether this is all true to the man that the character is based on, I'm not sure, but I do know that Leo convinces you of all of this man's emotions, and in the end, you sort of feel yourself feeling bad for just an all-around despicable human. Lily Gladstone plays Molly, Ernest's wife, in what seems to be her breakout performance. She's fantastic in this film and shouldn't be overshadowed by the heavy hitters DiCaprio and De Niro. She's reserved and meticulous, as even after her marriage, she remains untrustworthy of the company that Ernest keeps. She remains unflinchingly loyal to him, as the love that they both share for each other seems so real, even despite all of the secrets and lies that he keeps from her. You feel her struggle as her family and ultimately her people are being used for profit and being murdered off. Gladstone forces you to empathize with this character's struggle. You watch as her and her people continue to lose everything they hold dear after being promised so much. Molly serves as sort of the POV character. She suspects everyone is out to get the Osage, and as you navigate this world with her, as the viewer, you become cautious of every character that she encounters on screen. Even the doctors, it's a common theme in this film that the people of Osage suffer from debilitating diabetes, and every guardian around them in this film is always pushing medication and constant medical care onto them in any attempt to help them live better lives. But every time you watch DiCaprio stick that needle into Gladstone's arm, you become leery, no matter how much she does love him. You suspect that somehow something else is going on. And once Hale is prosecuted for the murders and Ernest is in FBI custody, Molly sits down with him one last time. Throughout the whole trial, Gladstone plays her character with only expressions that she feels some sort of sympathy for Ernest. and you remain curious whether or not these two will be able to come through this together. And when she finally does get the chance to sit down across from Ernest, you know. She asks him if he's spoken all of his truths, and he confirms he has, only for our worst suspicions to be realized, as Molly reveals that the medication that she has been getting for so long was ultimately poisoning her. And at that moment, you can't help but appreciate how she skillfully played this role. She was an inspiring casting. This story and the performances of this film cannot be overstated, but we can't disregard other qualities that add to this film's productions. The set designs are beautiful. The outfit and costume designs are authentic and impeccable. The cinematography, along with the superb score and the music compositions that accompany it, are all astounding. Some viewers may take issue with how much screen time Scorsese gives to the characters of Hale and Burkhart because, after all, they were two terrible human beings. But I think portraying their stories is as important as portraying Molly's, and into understanding how these tragedies occurred. I think it's important to see how these two men operated, and to see how one man deceived the entire group of Osage people into believing that they were allies, that they were all equals. And if we're not presented with as much of their story as we were, I don't know if this movie would have had the same emotional effect. If you're a fan of Scorsese or even the cast he rolls out for this film, I would highly suggest giving it a watch. Some parts are difficult to see on screen, yes, but this is an important story that deserves to be told, and it deserves to be listened to. And I think Scorsese does a terrific job of executing this story. It may leave you slightly dejected for a short while afterward, but I do firmly believe that you'll be glad that you watched it. I know I was.